Okay, so I'm going to pop the link into the chat here for us for the website that we're going to be referring to here. So you feel free to go on there. There's a few links in there for some of the activities that we're going to be doing as we go through this morning. So the general outline of today, we'll have a session this morning which is hopefully as interactive as I can make it. I wish we were in the same room. This is something that I probably going to find quite challenging to try and teach about questioning when I can't actually engage in questioning. I would love to have been modelling this and interacting rather than just telling. So that Scottish phrase, better felt than telt, it's the kind of thing that we need to try and experience. So that's why I wanted everybody in the small groups this morning to try and give us some opportunity at least to interact. And we'll see how we get on. But certainly the middle session today, there'll be a good chunk of time for you to sit with actual people in an actual room and have an actual conversation with human beings and interact there. So hopefully you'll find that very, very useful. So in the grand scheme of things, we're moving on in our teacher-pupil learning dialogue to the diagnostic questioning. Today is very much focusing on those practical methods that we'll be using to do that diagnosis process. And in some ways, I suppose I could summarize everything and maybe even save us a lot of time just by quoting Tom Sherrington there. Ask more questions of more pupils at a deeper level. That's it. That's the essence of it in many ways. So as we jump into the detail of this, feel free to keep that at the forefront of your minds. More questions of more pupils at a deeper level. And if we can come out the other end of this training with some specific ideas of how to do that so that we know what we're doing moving forward, that can be a good and positive thing. Okay, I'm going to just take a few moments at the start here to do a little bit of a recap on the things that we have done before on this, just to remind us, because the methods that we're going to look at today sit very much in the context of the intent. Mr. Robinson, I wonder, could you phone in to Jill and ask her to turn the bells off if she's in today, or if somebody could do that, that'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, it's sitting very much in the context of our intent. What is our purpose for this? Because in many ways, the methods that I'm going to tell you, we're not reinventing the wheel. I'm not coming in with some super secret questioning techniques that nobody has ever come across before, the holy grail that only teachers knew this, we would find their jobs much easier. You're going to know a lot of the methods that I'm going to be introducing to you today. So the key for us here is to understand why we are using the methods so that we can use them to their best and fullest extent. So the first thing we said when we were talking about the knowledge schema is that we make sense of new content as we relate it to our prior knowledge. Whatever metaphor analogy works for you, whether it's the hanger, that's the one in the wardrobe of everything being in its place and the clothes neatly organized, and the hangers being the schema that the pupils can hang the content on, or whether it was the Morecambe and Wise, all the right notes in all the right order. It's not just the right content, but it's the connections, it's the structure, it's how they relate to each other. And it's that allows us to make sense and make meaning of the content. We're not just delivering content, we're making meaning. And this meaning making process is influenced by our prior knowledge. Now, again, we have looked at this, which two go together. Well, that classification process you would engage in is dependent to a very large extent on your prior knowledge. What prior knowledge do you bring? Do you bring a prior knowledge that those look like football jerseys? Then you'll classify them based on that. If you don't, you might classify them based on colour or on pattern. Our prior knowledge helps us to make sense of the new material. So in a sense, this is connecting with what we already do know. It might be subject-based knowledge. It might be everyday metaphors or examples that we can use to bring that in for our pupils. Which brings me again to the illustration I shared before when Mr. Robinson talked to me about Harold Abrahams. He, of course, was thinking of this guy here, the Chariots of Fire long distance runner. I didn't go there at all. I went to Howard Abraham because we're in Lurgan after all. And Howard Abraham is a very, very famous car dealer in Lurgan. And of course, Stanley himself, chairman of the Board of Governors. So I was completely in the different zone here. Mr. Robinson was talking about Harold Abrams, I was thinking Howard Abrams. And because of that disconnect, I had connected to the wrong prior knowledge. I was gone off and completely the wrong direction. So prior knowledge can work to help us, but prior knowledge can also work to create some problems. Thank you very much for the sorting bells, great. So we need to be aware of that. And then we've also got the concept here of our threshold concepts. These are things that can unlock or block the learning moving forward. Okay, so you know what I'm going to quote here, don't you? Back to the old salt of a metal. If you don't know what a salt of metal is, even the correct explanation from a biology teacher friend of yours is not going to make any sense whatsoever. And if the pupils are sitting in our classrooms and they don't have that clear sense in and understanding in their mind, that's going to block their progress. Conversely, if we explain it, it unlocks it. It opens it up for them. So if the prior learning is what we do know, this is, if you like, what we don't know. We need to be aware of that as well as we're moving forward. So in our last MLT meeting, I talked to you about one of the things I've been doing with ecosystems with our year 13s. And one of the threshold concepts there was to give them a sense of how much is a lot of rain. I said to you at the time that whenever we are talking about temperature and geography, people have a sense of that. You walk outside and you get a sense, oh, it feels like about 18, 20 degrees. That's very nice. It's definitely a flip-flops day, that kind of thing. But we don't have anything like the same general everyday sense of walking out, oh, it feels like it's going to be a 20mm rain day today. We don't have that. Throw in also to the mix the fact that anything measured in millimeters makes it sound like it's not going to be a lot. Millimeters, sure, those are the tiny little divisions in your ruler. They're millimeters, whatever the number is, millimeters can't be very much, can it? So one of the things that I need to address as a threshold concept for them is a question like this. Is 740.6 millimeters of rain a big rain total or not? Now, this was the amount of rain that fell in northern Italy last weekend in 12 hours. Now, probably you'll have a sense from that as to whether or not that's a big number. I mean, it's reported in the first instance. So you're not going to report, it was a typical rainy day in northern Italy. You're probably sensing from just a bit of common sense that that's going to be big, but how big? And this is where having a frame of reference can be very important. So it's quiz time. We're going to get you to type in an answer into the chats, please. But as before, please do not press enter until I tell you to go. All right, so just have your answer ready. You may know the answer to this, you may not know, and it's an entire guess. But the question is, and please don't press enter until I tell you, the question is, what is the typical annual rainfall in Lurgan? Type the answer into the chat now, please. In millimeters. Okay. There's a little bit of conferring going on in my room at the moment, but they're looking very confused. Oh no, wait, don't press enter yet. Don't press enter. Katie, that's very specific. 243 millimeters. Have you measured it or something? Okay, I give you a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, press. Okay. Right. The correct answer is, yeah, you're not too far off. The correct answer is the typical average annual rainfall for Lurgan, which you would probably agree is a pretty rainy place, is about 800 to 900 millimeters per year. Now read what's on the slide again in light of that, and all of a sudden that figure means an awful lot more to you, doesn't it? This was from this tweet here. Italy, a new European record, a whopping 740.6 millimeters of rain in just 12 hours. Italy set a new national record for rainfall in 6 hours, then went on to break the European record for 12-hour totals. In other words, we got close to the total amount of rain that fell, that falls typically in Lurgan in an entire year in 12 hours in Italy. Now, if my pupils know, if they've got that frame of reference, average annual rainfall Lurgan about 800 to 900 millimeters, all of the other millimeters of rain stuff that I cover from all the different biomes across the world, it makes sense they have a frame of reference. Another frame of reference, take a look at the desk you're sitting on at the moment. How high do you reckon that is? Is that about 75 centimeters, something like that? So it's another frame of reference for you just to get a sense of how much rain is falling. Now, if you didn't have that threshold concept, if you didn't have that, then that figure, you kind of feel like it must be significant, but you don't know. Threshold concept unlocks that. Here comes another one. Okay, another opportunity in your groups. Now, here's one rule in this one, please. If you know the answer to this in your groups, please don't tell the others. This will be more fun if you select those in your group that perhaps don't know the answer. So I'm going to ask you a question first of all, a completely open-ended question, and then I'll give you a slightly more specific one, and then we'll see how you get on. So the open-ended question, number one, name the linguistic technique that Shakespeare has used in this piece of prose from Romeo and Juliet. Okay, here is your follow-up question. Can you find for me or explain to the people in your room where you see iambic pentameter in this? Iambic pentameter, that's what it is. So explain it. Off you go. Okay, it's total silence in my room. I've been an English teacher here, but she's looking disapprovingly at the other two, not knowing this. Okay. What is iambic pentameter? Okay, I do apologize. I've even got an English teacher in here. I'm about to completely and utterly embarrass myself by trying to explain iambic pentameter, which I only found out in August on the training day whenever Chloe explained it to us. So iambic pentameter is da-dum, da-dum, hold on, count da-dum, 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 da-dum. Is that right, Chloe? With the emphasis on the second syllable. So, oh, there's Howard wanting to join in. Just locking all the doors. Okay, thank you, Howard. Okay, so what I'd like you to do in your groups is it's the emphasis on the second syllable. So each of those lines is 10 syllables, Chloe, yes, 10 syllables, but they're in pairs with the emphasis on the second syllable. So try saying that with the rhythm of iambic pentameter in your room, please. It's tough. Do you know, we're having some issues in the room here. It's tough enough, even when you get it explained to you. I suppose the video not coming across didn't really help. But I'm hoping that experience, if you are finding this tough, I was kind of hoping you would, because what I'm hoping you're having is the experience of how not having that threshold concept clear in your minds can block your understanding. If you know iambic pentameter, you'll do this no problem. But if you don't, even when it's explained, you'll struggle. Okay. So Chloe, be encouraging and nod along if I get this right, because I'm about to try and pronounce some Shakespeare here. So here we go. I'm going to try and do the da-dum, da-dum, da-dum rhythm. To households both alike in dignity, in fair Viona where we lay our scenes, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Oh, Chloe's being very nice. I've probably absolutely butchered that, but I'm hoping that you got the sense of the rhythm. And somebody who could pronounce Shakespeare properly could pronounce that and feel that rhythm and interpret that rhythm in the same way that a musician will take a piece of music and interpret that and will understand the difference between 3, 4, and 6, 8. To the mathematician, they maybe sound like they're the same. To the musician, no, they're completely different. It's a completely different feel. Another example of a threshold concept there, if you don't know what those things mean. But the whole idea with this threshold concept is that they block or unlock, which brings us then to the diagnostic questioning. The role of diagnostic questioning then is to discern the extent to which our pupils have accessed the new knowledge that we're trying to communicate to them? Have they made the right connections to the right prior knowledge? Have they interpreted the threshold concepts well? Have you introduced them to them? Have you used them to unlock the knowledge? And how do you know is the key question. And that's really where we're coming along here with the diagnostic questions this morning. So we're looking at this whole concept of a feedback dashboard before. If a dashboard's in front of you, it gives you wide-ranging information in a timely manner. Okay, right. I'm going to give you another chance in your groups to have a go at this, because if we were in the room together, I'd be doing this as part of a question and answer with the groups here. We're about to see how much of what I've just said has stuck in your mind. So using only the images, I've made 4 points, 4 principles so far, using only the images. See how well you can articulate and summarize the points that I've made so far. I'll give you a couple of minutes of that. Off you go. Okay, so can I have your attention then back? Now, if we had all been in the room together, what I would have then done is ask questions around the room. And the purpose of that would have been to help me to discern the extent to which everybody had picked up what I was saying. I'm hoping that you've had a chance to do that now within your rooms. And I'm just going to summarize quickly what I've said there so that you can then check for yourself the extent to which the extent to which the learning is sticking with you. So here we go. These were the points I was making. Do you want to have a quick read over those? Okay, so this is where I would love to have been in the room to model that, and you have to use your imaginations a little bit more, but hopefully you're getting the sense of how this would all work, how I would ask questions that play 2 roles. Actually, I mean, they allow me to diagnose. They allow me to figure out the extent to which people have picked up what I've said, but they also allow you in your role here today, or the pupils in your classroom, to begin the process of taking the gist of what they've just heard and to put it into their own words. That's the process of meaning making. They need to get a chance to talk, because the talking allows them to translate the concepts into something more concrete. So the diagnostic questioning, the loops that go on in those 2 ways are very, very important and for everybody in the room, for teacher and for pupils. Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance for a little group-based exercise of first use of the digital jotter. So into the website here, and let me just refresh this. You will see a link just below the Google Slides to a threshold concepts. If you go in there, open that up, it'll be a digital jotter just waiting for you. And I'd like you just to take a slide for the room that you're in. So whoever's room you're in, you're having the weighty responsibility, please, of typing in the names of the teachers that are in with you at the top. But then there are boxes down below there for you to have a little bit of a chance to think about in your subject an example of a threshold concept and how you explain it. Now, I would like to capture this on the slides, folks, but I do want to give you a chance to talk to each other about it and to think about it. So we're going to take maybe 5 or 7 minutes or so at this. So if you could start off in your groups, just chatting with each other. And this is where the fact that you're in with people that are teach a very different part of the curriculum from you can really help, I hope, because I hope you're going to be saying things as a threshold concept in your subject that other people in the room are going to go, I don't think that I know that. So hopefully give you a good opportunity to bandy those around a little bit. I'll mute the mic here, but if you could keep the sound on, and then I'll call you back in around about 5, 7 minutes. After you've had a little bit of a chat, can you start to type in some of what you think the threshold concepts might be into the digital jotter for me? Just before I release you to do that, are there any questions about what you're going to be doing over the next wee while? Okay. Enjoy the chat. Okay, folks, if we can have your attention back in again, just a wee sneaky, and what are we doing here? Oh, look at that coming in. Yeah, we sneaky preview for you about how we can use digital jotter. That's going to be one of the methods that I'm going to be talking about in a moment's time. But you can see how I was able to go around and give feedback on some of the things that you were saying. Now, a couple of quick observations in this. If you found that hard to do, that in many ways is not unexpected, because as experts, we know the stuff. And it's actually tricky enough to put yourself in the position of a novice and then try and figure out what is it that they don't know that I'm assuming that they will know. And I suppose 29 years of experience of teaching has meant that I've looked at enough seas of blank faces over the years to figure out what those things are. I want to show you this. This came in just last year from the Royal Meteorological Society. Hopefully you can see a little bit of, maybe a little bit out of focus, but it's a document that they sent out free to all schools. But what I loved about it was that at each page, they had little boxes of misconceptions. So there's one here, a misconception. Are we in an ice age at the moment? Let's do a quick chat or comment in the chat. Are we currently in an ice age on our planet? Yes or no? Type your answer in. Are we currently in an ice age? Yes or no? Oh, there's Mr. Ross, who happens to be a geography teacher, saying yes. Yeah, I thought, Tracy, you were getting your hopes up that I was about to show you the movie Ice Age.
No, I'd seen the scones.
I saw that. Possibly. Laverne, that says, no, Laverne, we're not letting you away with the possibly, no 50-50, or no sitting in the fence here. Yes or no?
Oh, you're forcing me now. I've just done with my year 9s the Cumbre Vieja volcano in Spanish.
Oh, very good.
Never know.
Okay, stop Googling, Neil. Right, the correct answer is we are in an ice age at the moment. An ice age is defined at any time whenever there's permanent ice caps at the poles. We are at the moment in what is known as an interglacial period, and that's why we don't have glaciers over the British Isles like we did 11,000 years ago. So there's a very common misconception, and I loved it about this book. Every single page has those misconceptions, those factual concepts that could block or unlock. And it's really helpful, I think, sometimes for us as experts, which is what we are, we're subject experts, to be confronted with the fact that things that we know so well that we actually forget may not be common knowledge, or the things that the pupils need help with as they come into the class. Right, excellent. Let me come back into my slides here again. So that brings us then to that whole issue of the teacher-pupil learning dialogue. The message delivered versus the message received. Clearly my email about where you were to be this morning was a case of really ineffective instruction. The number of emails I got back, are we in the small groups? Yes, so yes. There are times we can get our instructions wrong, absolutely. But there are also times that we get our instructions absolutely right and the pupils make the wrong connections and they will go off in the wrong direction. So even when we get it right, I think it's good to assume that pupils will not make the right connections all of the time in the class. The message has been delivered, but has it been received? I love this quote from Tom Sherrington. It'll be quoted quite a bit today. A class is essentially a room full of highly individual, easily distracted, schema-forming brains grouped in front of us. Each individual is making meaning in their own individual way. Just because we say the right thing doesn't mean that they all pick it up. It's vital, therefore, that we get feedback from our students as much as we can. So this is the feedback loop. So I'm talking here in the feedback, not in the concept of the written feedback you'll give on a piece of homework or something. That's important as well. But this is feedback in the moment. This is the teacher-pupil learning dialogue that's going on in the class at the moment. And back again to Rosenstein, I love this quotation too. Effective teachers also stop to check for understanding. This checking has two purposes. Getting the students to elaborate on the material. So whenever I got you to go through using just those 4 images and try and summarize what I'd said so far. That's that bit. You're elaborating on the material. You're starting to make meaning from it based on what you're taking from the gist in your head and putting it into your own words. But it also has a purpose for us. It alerts the teacher when parts of the material need to be retaught. As I hear the pupils in my class formulate their thoughts, articulate what they're grasping, I'm constantly thinking, right, have they got it? Have they got, where's the misconception? Have they picked up that threshold concept? Is it blocking it or is it unlocking it? Have they connected to the wrong prior knowledge? I'm constantly diagnosing and assessing as part of this. So that brings us then to the next little task that we're going to do within our groups, which is down in this little button here. Open this digital jotter. I'll take a few moments to talk to you about this and then I'm going to move forward. How do you know when to move on? So we've got a 2x2 grid here. So this is along the bottom, degree of understanding. Some pupils, most pupils. Or sorry, this is the number of pupils down the bottom. Up the left here, we have got the degree of understanding. And we've got 2 little boxes that you can drag around. Okay, so again, if you go and get a slide, and there's just basically 2 questions. Where would you like to be before you move on? When you're teaching something and you want to move on to the next bit, where would you like to be? I think the answer to that's pretty obvious, pretty simple. Where do you end up being? Now, I think that the answer to that is not quite as simple as you might think. So I'm hoping that that's a prompt to some interesting conversations in your groups. Where would you love to be, but where are you willing to accept being before you move on? Just drag them somewhere on here, place them wherever you think they are, and enjoy your conversation. So again, you've got a slide per group. So the person whose room you're in, please, can you put the names at the top of the slide? And then this is very much discussion, and you can all have access to that. So hopefully it'll not be utter chaos. Just drag this around and see what you think. So I'll give you again about 5 or 7 minutes of discussion in your groups on this. Off you go. Okay, folks. Okay, let's come back into the room then. Now, this is again where I wish we were in the same room together, because I would love to get a flavour of the conversations that were going on there. Of course, there's no quote-unquote right answer to this. It was all about a tool and a vehicle for some reflection. But to me, that's an absolutely key question. If meaning-making can go wrong, more than that, expect it to. Even with the best explanation in the world, people will reach for the wrong prior knowledge. They'll make misconceptions. Even with your best endeavors, we need to find out where those misconceptions are, where the misunderstandings are. Of course, the green one was dead easy, where we'd like to be. And, you know, I'm hoping that we have lessons that are there. The fact of the matter is that many of us don't end up. We had a fascinating conversation in here about the pressures of how real those pressures are of the fact that we're senior high school, that every single class is an exam class, every single class. And ask the question, this is a big question, interesting question for reflection. What's the difference between covering the course and teaching the course? What's the difference between covering the course and teaching the course? Now, those pressures for covering the course are real, and certainly for me, my biggest frustrations in the classroom very often come from the fact that I know what I want to do to teach it, but I just don't have the time because the pressures are real. Throw in the small matter of a global pandemic, and that only makes things an awful lot worse. But that's why I think this diagnosis in the moment of trying to figure out, are they understanding right now? Not, do I diagnose in a week or two's time when I'm doing a test? That's important. But what if they've misunderstood? They've a couple of weeks of carrying that misunderstanding. Then you've, in many ways, got a more difficult job of unpacking and fixing that misunderstanding. What are you doing in the moment, in the classroom, as you are teaching to find out where they're at? Now, I'm going to offer a couple of observations just to think where that purple box can go. I think if I'm identifying those core concepts, those threshold concepts, those big things that run through, I can take a longer game, a longer look at this. I can move forward in a single lesson with the box perhaps in the middle, knowing that I'm going to come back to this next lesson and it'll nudge that way. Next lesson, it'll nudge that way. Next lesson. And I'm heading up with this trajectory. It's the same with exam skills. I've been working on that with the year 13s about how to write an extended prose in geography, right? And I say to them, okay, some of you will get this really quickly. Some of you will maybe be up here very, very quickly. Some of you may be down here, but over time, we're going to move up. Over time, this is our trajectory. We've got time, that's okay. So there may be certain aspects of your course, core exam technique skills that you can move upwards with the goal of getting there. But what about this scenario? Where would you like to be? Well, let's say that you're down somewhere here is where you would like to be on Thursday period 8. Most of them get it, no problem. Then the next period is Monday period 9. Are they all going to be in the same place Monday period 9 that they were in Thursday period 8? If you get all of them up to the top right-hand corner Thursday period 9, how many of them will have drifted back down here by Thursday period 8? Learning is not a linear process. That's circling back, and I need to diagnose Monday period 9 how much of that content is still there Thursday period 8. How can I do that? I can do retrieval practice at the start of the lesson. I can do quizzes, questions, any number of methods, but my goal is to know, am I ready to move on? Have I left people behind? And it's so vital that we know that. Okay, that brings us then to the approaches that we're going to take. If you have an emailed out a sheet for you for notes on this, if you have that in front of you and want to make notes on this, this is where we're going to rattle through them. And I'm going to try and talk through these and give you some really practical tips about how we might do this in our classrooms. Okay, first of all, we're going to take a look at 4 approaches. What I mean by an approach is a default setting. If you were to come into my classroom and I were to ask a question to my pupils, how would they react? Would they put their hands up? Would they shout out? What is the default? What is the norm? And the thing that strikes me as I reflect on this is that we all establish a different culture and ethos in our classrooms. Our pupils transition between those pretty seamlessly. They know what the expectations are in different classrooms. All of that to say, the ethos that there is in your classroom right now doesn't necessarily need to stay the ethos in your classroom. If on reflection you're thinking, I could ask more questions, I could diagnose better, you can nudge your ethos forward to that point. The culture that you have now doesn't need to be the culture that is there. The pupils will transition with you if you support them. So what are your default settings? Right, if you come into my classroom and ask a question, you will not see hands go up. You'll just not. And the reason for that is because I'm a huge fan of this no hands up. Now, why am I doing this? Remember, the whole rationale for all of this is the diagnosis. I need to know. And if I let them choose who's going to answer, you know what's going to happen. The same hands will go up all the time and they will answer. But what about everybody else? They will quickly learn that there's somebody else in the class is going to answer it. So I am ensuring that everybody thinks, and I'll typically do it like this, right? The question I'm going to ask is, here's your question. And then they know I could pick any one of them. There's a slight caveat to this. You know your class. There are certain students that I wouldn't pick on. I know that they'll have maybe some of the SEN students that would be very, very uncomfortable about speaking out. There are other ways I need to diagnose how they're getting on. So there is that slight caveat. But I want all my students to think that I could ask them because I want all my students to think. I don't want anybody to switch off, right? And as part of that, another thing that you will see happening a lot in my classroom is think, pair, share. Again, a technique that I know a lot of use. This works very well with no hands up. And again, I will frame it very often like this. Okay, here comes the question. The question I'm going to get you to consider is, here's the question, right? You have, and I really like making these time bound, you have 30 seconds with your partner to prepare an answer. Go. And because they're used to that, they just immediately start talking. And when you combine that with no hands up, they know that anybody could be asked at any stage, and it helps to keep them focused on what they're doing. Now, the sequencing of that, here's the question I'm going to ask, pause. That's the thinking time. Because as soon as you say to them, right, talk to the person beside you, they talk to the person beside you. Here's the question I'm going to ask, pause, you have 30 seconds, go. And then pick on some of them. Digital jotter, I've already demonstrated that to you. I must say this is the best COVID keeper for me. I devised it this time last year when I couldn't use my mini whiteboards, which I used extensively as a brilliant diagnosis tool. I was missing them desperately. I thought, how can I get that quick feedback from everybody? And what I've found with the digital jotter is not only does it replicate the mini whiteboards, it actually added value, because what I'm able to do is to watch my students as they're writing, not just by circulating around the room where I can see 1 or 2 students at a time, but go into slide view and I can see everybody, and I can give individual feedback. I can type it in. I type some feedback into some of you as you're working on it. Or if I'm spotting whole class misconceptions, I can say to everybody, okay, give me attention, everybody, just look to the front. Okay, a number of you are saying this. Let me just explain this again, because I don't think that maybe I've explained it properly, or I don't think you've picked it up right. So let's have another go at this. But it's that diagnosis tool in the moment that allows me to see how the students are getting on. And again, the final thing for the ethos is just that checking for understanding. It's just an assumption that I'm making that people will not hear correctly what I have said, even if I've said it as well as I possibly can. Now, I need to make sure that I'm explaining it as clearly as I can. Absolutely, that's my responsibility. But even if I do, they might reach for the wrong prior knowledge. They mightn't quite get the threshold concept. Have you quite picked up iambic pentameter yet? I mean, if you didn't know about it, you maybe know more than you did, but how secure is that? I need to check those kinds of things. So those are the kind of ethos things that you have within your classroom. Then we're moving on to the real practical methods. How did you get here? How did you work that out? Right. So if somebody gives you the right answer and they reply in just a phrase, what can you meaningfully diagnose about that pupil? Could they possibly have got the right answer for the wrong reason? I must say, as I've been thinking about the planning for this over this past term, it's been a brilliant opportunity for me to reflect on my own classroom practice. I ask loads of questions in class. It's very dialogic and very interactive. But I've been learning a lot. Even 29 years in, I'm still learning a lot through this and realizing actually they may have got the right answer for the wrong reason. I'm going to tell you an example of that later on when I show you a way of doing a whole class survey. So I need to ask them some questions to say, right, okay, brilliant. That's the right answer. Maybe give them a little bit of confidence. You've got it right. Good, 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 good. Now, explain your reasoning to me. How did you get there? And if you support them in that and guide them through with that, you can then really discern, have they got the right answer for the right reason, which may not be the case. If they got the right answer for the wrong reason, you've diagnosed that issue. You can sort it out in the moment as it emerges before it gets embedded. Right, the next one, if this one is how did you get here, it was the exclamation mark is the right answer and the question marks are the thinking process to get you there. Where can we go from here? And this is a kind of dialogic process of, right, okay, so you've got that question, you've got your answer, right? Let's see if we can build on this. Let's take this a little bit further. So let's say I'm looking at a graph. It's a graph between the wealth of a country and the crude birth rate in the country. And I discover that the wealthier the country, the lower the crude birth rate, something like that. A question that can follow on from this. So let's say I say to them, what is the relationship? Okay, yes, there is that relationship. You spotted that. Now, is that a correlation only? Or is there a causal relationship there? What might the links be from that? And we can tease that out a little bit in dialogue with the student who's just given me the right answer and to assess the extent to which she has properly understood it or just kind of vaguely got the right answer. Again, this is tremendous diagnosis potential. This one, I would say, for me, over the last weeks as I've been reflecting on this, has been game changer territory for me. 29 years in, and I can't believe that I hadn't thought of this before. Okay, picture the scenario. You've got a very dialogic question and answer session going on in your class. You're bouncing around a whole bunch of students to try and include as many as possible because you don't want anybody to think I can opt out in this class. And you're getting this big complex explanation together, and you go to Jamie, give me what do you think here? Oh, Jamie, brilliant, that's excellent. Right. Jane, can you take that a little bit further? Can you add a little bit more to that? Excellent. Right, Robert, over to you. What about that? Can you add anything? And you start to bounce this around, and little by little, you assemble the correct answer. And you're standing there as a teacher thinking, yes, this is brilliant. I must have explained this superbly. The class is getting it. The answer is emerging. And in your mind, if we go back to that schema wardrobe analogy, there's the hangers. And with each correct answer, there's another thing going on to the hanger. And you're standing there as the expert in the room going, yeah, I see it. But you see it because you already have that schema. So if you assemble the correct answer, pupil by pupil by pupil, what have you found out about any individual pupil in that class? Can any individual pupil synthesize that and pull it all together? And I suppose it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because I realized actually I haven't been doing this, and I've started, and it's been game changer. It's been brilliant, because I'll get to the end of assembling something. It'll be very dialogic. I'll be asking big questions, testing and applying their knowledge, that kind of thing. We'll assemble the answer, and I say, right, next. I'm going to give you a few moments to think about this, because they do need to think. And then I'm going to come around and see if you can piece it all together for me. And I'll survey the class, and I'll go around, maybe, big classes in geography. So this is an investment in time, but I think it's an investment. And I go around and I get them to repeat it. And what I've noticed happening here is the amount of thinking going on. Because again, if that's paired with no hands up, any one of them could be asked at any time. You see them thinking, and they're listening to each other, because I might come to them next. And if I listen to that other person, that's going to give me clues and tips. And we repeat it and rehearse it and reinforce it. We bounce around the class. And I can find then maybe some of the students that aren't quite able to piece it together. And, you support them, give them clues and hints, and help them to piece that all together. I love using this technique now. I can't believe it's taken me 29 years to discover it. Say it again better is a technique that basically says that the first form of the answer that a student will give, if they are thinking, if you're pushing their thinking forward, the first form of the answer will be provisional. It'll be tentative. It'll not be in the fully formed way that you as an expert would say it. So what do you do if you get a response like that? It's kind of mostly right, but not expressed in precisely the way that you would hope that they would need to in an exam setting. Now, this is taken, it should absolutely acknowledge a lot of these ideas are taken shamelessly from the work of Tom Sherrington. He's brilliant on this, and this is literally from him. One caveat he adds is that he's done this training and he's gone in to observe teachers, and they literally say to their pupils, say it again better, which now it's not the phrase you use. There are other ways of doing it. That's great, right? So you've got all those elements, right? You've got all the bits and pieces. Let's see if we can rephrase this a little bit to in my case, speak more like a geographer, speak more like an English student, whatever it would be. But you're encouraging them in that process of nudging forward. That helps them to take the gist of what you're saying and put it into good words and phrases. And it helps you also to diagnose. Right, no opt-out. What do you do with the I don't knows? If you're going to be asking questions that extend pupils' knowledge, if you're right at the edge of what they do know and are nudging them forward, you will get some I don't knows. Now, this can be linked up to the likes of Think, Pair, Share, where you give them an opportunity to think it through and verbalize. That's so important. The ability of students to verbalize their thinking in the early stages. I know, I think I get it in my head, but I just can't find the words. So common. So Think, Pair, Share really helps with that. But let's say you get to the end of think, pair, share, and you come to somebody and say, right, Jessica, what did you and Sarah think? And Jessica says, I don't know. What do you do? So it's not necessarily the wrong answer. It's just an answer that doesn't give you any sense of where they're at, doesn't give you any sense of the thinking process that they've gone through. Now, a slight caveat with this one. What if the I don't know is because they didn't bother thinking? Think, pair, share. I mean, I can see them in the class, can't you? You can absolutely see them. Those pairs that clearly aren't talking about the thing that you're wanting them to talk about. And very often they'll come and say, right, Josh, what do you think? What's the answer? I don't know. Josh, were you actually talking about that whenever I gave you the chance? Josh looks awkward. Just make sure you're talking about it next time, okay? So there is that. Okay, so I'm not talking about the people that kind of opt out of that, but it is the person that genuinely says, I don't know. What do you do with them? So I wonder, does this little image here give you a clue? So the pupil at the top doesn't know. Well, its approach says, okay, well, let me go to another pupil. And you know, what I'm really trying to do is to say to the pupils, if you don't know now, that's okay. That's okay. So I ask the question, I don't know. Yeah, well, that's okay. Let's see if we can get the answer, okay? So I'll come around to somebody else in the class. Jacob, can you have a wee go? Can you explain it to me, please? Brilliant, Jacob. Well done. You've got it. Okay, Josh, now you've heard Jacob's answer. Would you have another wee go at it for me? So the I don't knows become I don't know yet. And you give those students an opportunity to listen and articulate. Now, if you build that in as part of your culture, think of what happens in your classroom. If a student says, I don't know, that's a get out of jail free card, or can be. Oh, I don't know. No point in asking me, sir. I don't know. Okay, that's fine. You don't know yet. But I'm going to come back in a wee minute and let's see if I can help and support you to get the answer then. No opt-out. And Mr. Robinson talked about the no hiding places. That's the way that he referred to it, which reminded me of that saying from that movie, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but I have a particular set of questioning skills I have learned over a long career, skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. Yes, the no hiding place sounds a little bit scarier, so hopefully no opt-out sounds a little less threatening. And it's all about the tone and the culture you're doing with these. It's about creating the context where it's all about having to go. It's okay to say, I don't know, if you genuinely don't know, but I'm going to support and help you in the process of getting to the point where you're nudging forward. Now, again, all of these things are happening in the moment. For me, as the teacher, I am diagnosing widely and deeply and richly across my classroom as I'm doing that. Sample size, and Tom Sharrington talks a lot about sample size. If you only allow a few pupils to respond in your classes, what do you actually find out about them? You don't really find out a lot about your whole class. And that's why bouncing these things around can be so useful and so helpful. But there are certain key times whenever you need to get a sense of where the whole class is at. So I was talking a little bit earlier on about getting the right answer for the wrong reasons. I love these whole class surveys. I'm going to share a couple of techniques that I use with these. And these are closed questions. You might think on a training session of questioning, I'm going to say there's no room for closed questions in the class. Well, there's absolutely room for closed questions in a class, because a closed question can give you a very, very quick diagnosis. So an example I used earlier, are we currently in an ice age? Yes or no? Diagnosis, closed question. And I figure out there, okay, most of the people that I'm speaking with don't have a fully formed definition of what an ice age is. There's ice at the caps, that's an ice age. Anyway, you do that whole thing. Now, how do I do this in class? There's a couple of techniques that I love to use. One of them is to get the pupils to stand up and ask a 50-50 question. So I'll say to them, I can match this up with think, pair, share, right? Here comes the question, and it's a closed question, 50-50 answer, right? Quick discussion with the person beside you. Okay, everybody stand up. Sit down if you think the answer is, and again, the culture that I set in the classroom is sit down immediately, okay? Don't look at everybody else. Sit down immediately. What do you think the answer is? Sit down if you think the answer is A. And immediately I have a sense of how everybody is getting on in the class. So I did this yesterday with year 14s. The way I tend to frame it, I try to make sure that whoever ends up standing up isn't going to be embarrassed by standing up. You want to be sensitive when you do these things. But in a relatively big class, only 2 boys remained standing, and everybody else sat down. Some stood for a bit and then realized when everybody else was sitting down that they would follow the crowd and sat down. So you get a sense there of how confident people are in their answers as well, depending on how fast they go. 2 of them standing up. So Sarah, okay, boys, would it help you if I said that you've actually got the right answer? So immediately, yes, feeling much more confident. Okay. And then I can come and ask the, how did you get their questions? Right. So explain to me why you think what you think. So got an answer from one people that was entirely wrong. So you got the right answer by accident, or the right answer from the wrong reasoning. But I was able to diagnose that and able to sort that out in the moment. And similar with the other people. So what my diagnosis revealed there was that the pupils hadn't quite got what I just explained, and I needed to revisit it. I needed to go over it again to secure that understanding before moving on. But that quick 50-50 survey works really well. The other one that I like doing is a version of rock, paper, scissors, the 1, 2, 3 show. For this one, it can operate up to 5 different options. I'll maybe put them up in the flip chart because 5 options is a lot for people to remember. But I can again say to them, right, up to 5 options, maybe 2, maybe 3, whatever it'll be. I'm going to give you a series of options here. Here's the question, right? You 30 seconds in your groups to prepare an answer. Go. Okay, let's hear. Assume the position. 1, 2, 3, show. And again, it gets them to commit right in that moment. And you'll see them looking around, of course, and some of them, if they're in the minority, won't maybe change their vote or something like that. But you can discern from there those that are slightly more tentative, those that are more confident, and it can really help you going through. Now, I'm sure there's lots of other ways that you've found of doing that in your classroom as well. Those are just a couple of examples of ways that I can do those within my classroom. Okay, nearly there. I'm going to wrap this all up by, again, this is a wonderful observation, I think, from Tom Sherrington, who put all of this together. Why hexagons? Why hexagons? Well, partly because they remind me of my happy place, but it's not just that. Those of you who know anything about hexagons in the natural environment, hexagons are very, very efficient shapes for things to fit together, which brings us to this. Tom Sherrington will say that it's very often the combination of these methods. So you might want to combine the approach of no hands up and think pair share, which will mean that there's no opt-out because you have given the chance for people to think, and you're going to ask a range of pupils. And if they don't know, we'll go to another pupil. How did you get here? What was your thinking process? Okay, so we've got the right process here. Let's see if we can talk like a geographer. What are some of the terminology we introduce? What are things that we need to do? Let's see if we can formulate this in a better way, that kind of thing. Maybe it's that combination to go. Or maybe you're very taken by the digital jotter, as I am, and it's a really powerful tool for checking for understanding. In the moment, I can see how people are doing, and I can ask them questions. I can type little things on about how do we get there, but because they're all individually doing that in the moment, they're all individually having to piece it together. I'm seeing fully formed answers, or if I'm not seeing fully formed answers, I'm seeing where the students are falling short, that kind of thing. Might be no hands up, think pair share combined with whole class surveys, as I've just explained to you, right? We're going to do a survey in a moment. You've 30 seconds, and here comes the question. The question is, you have 30 seconds, go. Right, everybody stand up, sit down if you think the answer is A. Okay, and everybody votes. Nobody gets this kind of half stand up or half sit down. Everybody has to vote. There's no I don't know there. But have they got the right answer for the right reason? How did you get there? Explain your thinking. Have you got the right answer for the wrong reason? I need to know that. And it's combining these things together. And it's this suite of tools and these methods that we can use in the classroom. But all of it comes down to that most fundamental thing of why are we doing this? Because we need to know what they know. Even with the best explanation in the world, there will not always be the proper meaning made. What's the difference between covering the course and teaching the course? Oh, listen, there's no easy answer to that. But that's a brilliant question for you to go away and reflect on. How do I teach the course better? Not just how do I cover the course better? And surely a big part of that is making sure that you're securing that understanding on the way through. Okay, so summarized for you on the website is a little short explanation of each of those, an opportunity for you to go away and to think about those a little bit more and reflect on them. I finish with a quote from Trevor Robinson. Mr. Robinson, you'll like this little quote here. You say this a lot, and it's so true. Look out for those missed opportunities. In your class, how many of those methods would you use? What is the default setting? Are you checking for understanding? Are you engaging in that default feedback loop? Or are there missed opportunities? And finally, from Tom Sherrington, a blog that he just wrote this week, I thought this was brilliant. I've been thinking that much greater weight needs to be placed on exploring what our students have actually understood during a teaching sequence. The depth of their understanding relative to the teacher's intentions, and the student's own sense of their understanding, recognizing their own areas of strengths and where their gaps lie, their confidence and their fluency in explaining their understanding. Loads to reflect on there. I mean, that Tom is a brilliant writer in that he packs a lot into a phrase. You could reflect on each phrase there and learn a lot from it. But this turn of phrase at the end was excellent. It's the curriculum experienced and assimilated by the student that matters, not the one we have on paper or in our minds. In our classes, what is the lesson experienced and assimilated by our pupils? And how do we know? Through diagnostic questioning. After break, we'll have the opportunity to take those methods and to put them into practice. So we'll just reconvene in the same meet for a couple of minutes, just at the start for me to give you a few directions of what we do. But that's everything for now. Mr. Robinson, I'll just hand over to you if there's anything you want to say just as we finish.
I just want to say, Alistair, a big thank you to you. I think I once read somewhere that once people start quoting you, it's time you quit. I'm expecting a lot of quotations coming my way now. Thanks very much, Alistair, for all the time and effort that you put into that. Obviously, it's deeply, deeply appreciated. I think you have got us thinking. I mean, I think we were all, when we were dealing with the iambic pentameter, we were all there with the pupils, and I thought a lot about how I felt during that experience, because equally it was making me think, how do our pupils feel as well as how do they think? And those two things are inextricably linked. If the feeling's wrong, the thinking will be deeply impaired as well. And again, we're back to that whole relationships and so on. And I was thinking about, did I opt out? I did actually opt out in the millimeter thing, 740 millimeters. I was, what is that? Why is he not saying it in inches? Why is it not in, you know, what? And then I'm thinking, well, what is 74 millimeters? Is that 70-40 centimeters? What does that actually look like? And how would I know if something out of the desk means an awful, you know? So there are all kind of things going in there in my head, and I'm thinking that's exactly what's happening when you're explaining tenses and languages, you know, things in chemistry, geography, and then I love that. I think it was the sharing, or either it was one of the two. Any of the quotation you had, Alistair, of easily distracted.
Yeah.
I can ask the question here: was everyone on this meet now totally focused all of the time? How many people did an email? How many people looked at their phone? How many people did, you know, all of those things? Now, we all had the cover of our cameras off, which is, and that's what happened during lockdown, and we know lots of that was going on. No excuse for that in the classroom, folks. No excuse, and I do hold to that about missed opportunities. And yeah, I wouldn't certainly want it, Alice, to be threatening to say no hiding place. I think what I mean by that is that I just don't want anyone to feel comfortable in a classroom where they feel that they cannot be part of what's going on. I think we have a duty as teachers to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, Alice, thank you very much. I hope that that the middle session now, as people start to put it into their own context and so on, will make a difference. But great, and also welcome. I mean, I'm very pleased to see our other folks there as well joining us from the ALC, and hopefully you'll get something out of this and be able to take this back to your own schools as well. So, Alistair, thanks again. And if people are going to break up now, have our scones. And then we'll see you all back here at 11:30. All right?
Yep. Great stuff. Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you.